You stir, a slow process more akin to the unfurling of smoke than to the sudden rise. The deep sleep gives way gradually, not with a snap, but with the gentle thinning of the darkness around you. You realize that even in this stillness, there is a subtle shift in the air, a coolness creeping into the sheltered space beneath the roof beams. It carries the faint, earthy scent of damp straw and old wood. The cool surface of the straw presses softly against your body, an unexpectedly comforting weight. It has held you through the deep quiet of the night, a vast, encompassing quiet broken only by the very subtle, rhythmic breaths that settle in the periphery of your hearing. You feel the texture beneath you first, a collection of dry stalks, soft where compressed, slightly sharp at the edges where they have risen to meet the cool air. You take a slow measure of the pre-dawn light filtering through the single small window opening. It is not yet daylight, merely a pearl gray wash that suggests the coming arrival of sun. This weak, diffused luminescence gently washes over the rough wooden walls of your dwelling, revealing the imperfections and the deep wear etched into the beams from generations of lives lived within. Your body feels heavy, saturated with the deep rest of the night. The instinct to remain curled is strong, a comfortable inertia. Yet you feel an undeniable pull toward the morning routine, a quiet imperative that governs life in this small community. You begin the slow, conscious process of stretching, feeling your joints protest slightly with damp little sounds. Every movement requires deliberation, nothing rushed, matching the languid pace of the early hours. When you finally push yourself up onto your elbows, you notice the residual warmth radiating from the core of the sleeping space, contrasting sharply with the cool air that is now touching your skin. You gently shift your weight, mindful not to disturb the straw or any imagined sleeper nearby. The movements are practiced and quiet, a choreography performed over years of necessary economy. Rising from the bedding is itself an act of shedding. You peel your simple woolen coverings away from you. These cloths, already carrying the faint smells of yesterday's smoke and today's cool night air, feel inadequate for the emerging day. You stand for a moment in the central area of the room, letting the stillness settle over your limbs. The silence is not empty. It is filled with potential sound. The first signs of life are subtle murmurs from beyond your immediate dwelling. Far away, across the narrow, packed earth track that serves as your path, you hear a dull, rhythmic clanking, the unmistakable sound of a bucket being carried or emptied near a communal wash trough. This is followed by a lowing sound, the distant sigh of livestock beginning to stir themselves into the morning ritual. The sounds build in increments, like notes played softly one after another. You move toward the corner where the basin for washing awaits. Even the act of approaching it feels measured. You reach out and touch the rough-hewn wooden edge of the wash trough. It is cool under your fingertips, retaining the damp chill of the night earth. The wood grain feels deeply worked into, worn smooth by countless hands performing this same small rite of necessity. You collect a small basin, dipping it tentatively into the cold water. The temperature shock registers immediately, a quick, bright sting against your skin that nonetheless seems profoundly cleansing. You use the coarse soap block, which smells faintly of lye and wood ash, to wash your hands first. Each rub is methodical, paying attention not only to cleanliness, but also to the lingering sleepiness in your mind. The water continues its gentle flow, pulling away the accumulated dust of slumber and the grit of yesterday's day. As you cleanse your face, cupping your hands to splash the cool water onto your cheeks, the clarity slowly returns, chasing away the last vestiges of deep sleep fog. You observe the slow drip from the basin edge, each drop seeming weighty with simple purpose. The ritual continues, washing your hair quickly at the communal trough, rinsing out the soap residue until the water runs perfectly clear. Even this mundane task demands a certain economy of movement and time. There is no hurry. The morning dictates that nothing can be rushed while respecting the inherent slowness of life in this place. Afterward, you draw your clothes fully into place, feeling the weight of the simple linen over your skin. The fabric feels crisp, momentarily revitalized by the wash. You stand for another moment near the washing area, breathing deeply. The air now holds a composite scent, the damp musk of the river earth mixed with the faint metallic tang of the water and the sharp, clean smell of soap residue. You leave the quiet solitude of your dwelling and step onto the main track. The coolness underfoot is surprising, seeming to seep through the soles of your shoes into your bones. You notice that the ground here, the packed earth mixed with fine gravel, is uneven, requiring constant micro-adjustments in balance. This landscape has shaped not just the architecture but the pace of life itself. The morning light strengthens slightly now, shifting from pearl gray to a pale, buttery yellow that promises warmth. It catches the minute-suspended dust motes in the cool air before them. Everything is awake now, even if only partially. From farther up the track, you hear a man coughing, a deep, chesty sound, as he shoulders his own bucket, joining the chore of fetching water. You do not exchange greetings. Acknowledgement passes simply through proximity and shared understanding. You begin your slow journey toward the next necessary destination, carrying perhaps a piece of firewood or emptying an empty pail. The rhythm is established. Slow steps, steady breathing, eyes absorbing the patterns of life around you. This routine, this movement towards basic needs, thirst, fire, cleanliness, is the foundation upon which everything else in your small existence is built. The air has a distinct scent now. It is the powerful blend of wood smoke mingling with damp earth and early morning chill. The smoke is not from your immediate home, but drifts in from several other chimneys up the way, forming an invisible canopy over the community. It smells comforting and deeply domestic, marking the boundary between sleep and work. You continue walking, allowing your gaze to drift past the small details of passing life. You note a woman bent over by an open pail near another dwelling, her hair bundled simply at her head. She moves with practiced economy, every gesture economical and meaningful. A child laughs faintly in the distance, a thin, bright sound that cuts through the general hum of morning labor. Every small activity holds its own rhythm. The grating sound as a merchant hauls a wooden cart loaded low with goods. The sharp thwack of an axe striking wood nearby. The intermittent bleating from penned animals. These sounds are not chaotic. They are structured, part of a communal symphony played out before the high sun. You settle into this slow march, feeling the deep satisfaction that comes from contributing one small piece to the collective functioning. Your breath deepens and smooths out, mirroring the steady pace of your feet on the rutted ground. The need for haste is utterly foreign to you now. Time here unfolds like water against stone, predictably and gently. The chill of the morning air settles around you, a damp coolness that has seeped into your bones after the warm enclosure of the dwelling. You gather the small bundle of kindling, carrying it with an easy economy of movement. It is not heavy, yet it feels necessary, weighted by the promise of warmth. You walk slowly away from the last shelter, moving towards where the scent of damp earth and wood smoke is strongest. The ground beneath your feet is uneven cobblestone mixed with packed dirt, cool and firm underfoot. You observe how the way the early sunlight struggles to pierce the thickness of the surrounding buildings, casting long, pale rectangles across the stones. These patches of light are brief and ephemeral, moving slowly as the sun rises higher. You find yourself near a communal washing stream or perhaps just a patch of deeply shadowed earth where chores are beginning in earnest. The scent here is potent, wet moss mixed with the sharper, acrid smell of recent wood smoke that has not yet dissipated entirely. It reminds you of cooking fires and heating embers, the smell of community life starting up slowly. You pause near the stream edge, feeling the slight mist rising off the water even before it touches your skin. The temperature difference between the air and the damp earth is palpable, a refreshing chill that encourages slow, careful movements. You bend down slightly to inspect the smallest twigs and pieces of dry kindling left scattered nearby. You pick up a splintered piece of birch wood, running your thumb over its rough surface grain. It feels dry, almost brittle, contrasting with the slick coolness of the stones at your feet. These simple acts of gathering fuel are not grand labors. They are repetitions, rhythmic and necessary, anchoring you to the immediate moment. The methodical nature of collecting kindling mirrors the slow pace required just to wake up, a quiet determination that settles in your limbs. As you gather materials, you become acutely aware of the other routines unfolding around you. A farmer, perhaps a little further down the lane, is leading a pair of oxen. Their rhythmic shuffle on the uneven ground creates a deep, steady drumming sound that seems to emanate from the very earth itself. Further off, the muffled clanking of buckets being filled at a trough provides another kind of percussion, a human-made rhythm against the natural cadence of breathing animals and settling dust. You notice the way the light catches the worn edges of their simple leather harnesses, reflecting back the early days' promise in dull, beaten gleam. You move towards your task, perhaps gathering smaller amounts of wood to supplement what you carry. You do not hurry. There is nowhere to rush to, and nothing urgent demanding immediate attention. Your movements are guided by an innate understanding of the flow. Gather material, carry it back toward a central point, repeat. This quiet industry becomes a meditation in itself. The physical act of walking with purpose, even a gentle one, grounds you, allowing your mind to settle into the rhythm of necessity. The effort of preparing the fire means slowing down everything else. You consider the wood. Each piece is unique, carrying its own history. A splinter from an old fence post, or a clean curl of birch bark fallen naturally. These objects are conduits of time and labor. You think about how much human care goes into such simple things. The trimming of a branch, the careful stacking of logs to prevent moisture absorption. This attention to small details reflects the overall rhythm of life here, a deep respect for the available resources. The smell of smoke grows stronger now, no longer just a faint whisper, but a definite presence that mixes with the clean scent of damp wood and cold stone. It is the smell of transformation, the fire waiting to be lit. You pause briefly near where your supplies will eventually go. The morning air, though chill, carries a clarity unlike the heavy sweetness of night. You tilt your head back slightly and breathe in deeply, the complex mixture of scents. Wood smoke, wet wool from passing travelers, the faint mineral tang of cold water running off stones, and the yeasty scent that always accompanies early morning baking. It is the smell of waking up together. You notice a detail on the nearest wall, perhaps some ancient graffiti etched into the stone or faded discoloration, where the mortar has deteriorated over time. These tiny marks speak volumes about generations of people who have lived within these very walls, performing the same simple, necessary routines you are undertaking now. Their lives were structured by the sun's predictable arc and the seasonal demands for heat and food. The preparation for meals begins to assert itself physically. You walk toward a central cooking area, perhaps passing another dwelling where smoke is already curling from an open hearth. The need for fire dictates the flow of the community's early day. Smoke drifts upwards, carrying with it tendrils of warmth and promise. This necessary action, the building of heat, requires focus and measured movements. You think about the coming meal, bread waiting to rise, or perhaps a pot of porridge on a low flame. The anticipation is not one of dramatic pleasure, but of quiet, sustaining comfort. The simplicity of these staples speaks to a life where every calorie counted, yet where enough was always found if labor continued. The work becomes more tactile. You find a dry patch, perhaps some tinder or softer kindling that needs careful handling. Your fingers become slightly numb from the cold air, increasing your awareness of their small muscles and dexterity. You pick up a bundle of very thin, straight grasses, the perfect size for catching the initial spark. These actions are deeply ingrained, learned not through instruction, but simply by existing in this rhythm for years. There is no thinking required, only careful execution. The chill begins to settle deeper into your outer layers, causing an urge to move slightly, to stretch out the stiffness accumulated during the night's deep rest. You feel the subtle pull in your shoulders and the gentle ache in your knees, reminders of simple biological fact. This physical reality links you immediately back to the earth and to the slow cycle of waking up. The morning air continues its slow, steady process of warming, subtly changing the quality of light from a pale gray-blue to a softer yellow wash. You continue collecting wood not just for immediate use, but perhaps anticipating another fire later in the day, linking the labor across time. The careful gathering is part of the collective preparation for the rhythm that lies ahead, cooking, working, enduring until dusk. You watch how the smoke rises. It curls upward at first, tentative and hesitant, like a sigh escaping the hearth. Then, as it gains momentum, it straightens out against the vast sky, an ephemeral gray plume marking the point where Earth routines meet the openness of the heavens. The sheer consistency of this pattern, year after year, generation after generation, is deeply reassuring. It anchors your understanding of time. You proceed slowly, carrying the small pile of precious fuel toward a sheltered corner, feeling the steady, deep rhythm of pre-day life continue to flow around you, measured by footsteps, and the necessary preparation for fire. You settle your focus upon the task at hand, allowing the world to recede into a gentle blur around you. The air in the room carries the scent of natural materials, dry wool, perhaps a hint of beeswax polish, and the earthy musk that always clings to things handled by human hands. Your craft is simple, rooted in necessity, requiring nothing grand but consistency. Perhaps you are spinning wool or mending the sturdy wooden handles of farming implements. Whatever it is, it demands a steady rhythm from your fingers. The world contracts until only this small patch of activity exists within your field of vision. You begin by preparing the materials. If you are with yarn, you carefully sort the plies, checking for any inconsistencies in the staple length or color. This act of sorting is not merely preparatory. It is an exercise in slowing time down to a manageable pace, allowing your mind to mimic the gentle patience required of the wool itself. You pick up your tool, the spindle perhaps smooth from years of use, its weight familiar and comforting in your palm. You feel the cool grain against your skin, noting the faint discoloration where oil has seeped into the wood over time. Its history seems etched into the surface. This object, so plain and utilitarian, becomes a centerpiece for a quiet ritual. The first few turns are slow, almost tentative. Your arm moves in a soft, predictable arc, meeting resistance with gentle pressure. There is no need to hurry. Rushing would only introduce unevenness, an unwanted imperfection into the fiber. You become acutely aware of the micro-movements, the slight flexing at your elbow, the tension settling through your forearm as you guide the rotation. It is a body working in perfect concert with its tool. When the yarn begins to twist and gather speed, the sound changes slightly. It moves from silence into a soft, persistent whirring, a gentle humming that seems to anchor you in the present moment. This steady sound becomes a kind of internal metronome for your thoughts. You notice how the rhythm pulls the wandering edges of your mind back into this contained reality. There is a certain comfort in predictability, a grounding force that allows more complex worries to simply float away unnoticed. If you are mending leather, the focus shifts from continuous motion to precise pressure. You run your thumb over the grain of the hide, feeling the imperfections, the slight stretch marks, the areas where moisture has caused it to contract slightly. The needle and thread become extensions of your will. Each stitch is placed with measured care, through the wear, catching the underlying structure, reinforcing the line of weakness. This work demands a meticulous understanding of tensile strength, of how different materials bear weight differently. The air carries faint smells that complement the craft. When working with wood, there might be the clean, sharp scent of sawdust mixed with sweat and effort. If dealing with soap or tallow, a sharper, more alkaline odor mingles with the subtle dampness from the nearby wash basin. These smells are simply the markers of life continuing around you. You find yourself observing your hands, the tools that do all this work. They are dusted lightly with natural fibers. They bear the small cuts and calluses earned not in moments of dramatic crisis, but in the long accumulation of routine labor. Look closely at the knuckles, the slight stiffness in the joints that only comes from repetitive motion. These hands hold a knowledge that could never be written down, the exact tension needed for this thread, the gentle curve required to shape that piece of wood. The rhythm dictates everything. Your breathing slows down, synchronizing almost imperceptibly with the tempo of your craft. Inhale during the pause between repetitions. Exhale as the work continues smoothly. It is a physical meditation, transforming labor into an act of pure concentration. You stop thinking about the meal or tomorrow's weather or what passed through the market square earlier in the day. For this sustained period, there is only the immediate relationship between your hand and the material. If you are gathering kindling, the focus is on observation mixed with gentle physicality. You crouch low amongst the fallen wood, examining the heartwood of a piece of fallen branch. Is it dry enough? Does it have sufficient surface area to catch a spark without crumbling entirely? Your movements are economical and practiced. You gently break apart small tangles of twigs, separating them by diameter and dryness level. This is not simply collecting fuel. It is an act of cataloging resources, an understanding of the forest's slow generosity. Sometimes your mind wanders, briefly catching sight of something peripheral, a wildflower pushing up through packed dirt beside your workspace, or the way a sliver of afternoon sunlight cuts across the floorboards, highlighting every tiny speck of dust. These momentary distractions are not interruptions. They are part of the process, punctuating the continuous flow with small visual anchors. The steady pace settles you into an almost deep reservoir of quietude. You realize that this predictable cycle, the preparation, the focus, the execution, is a fundamental rhythm to existence in this corner of the world. It is not work done out of desperation or economic panic. It is work born from stability and necessary maintenance. The materials themselves teach you patience. The wool must be sorted before it can be spun. The wood must be dried over months before it provides heat. The leather must cure slowly under pressure before it becomes durable. Life, in many ways, operates on this slow, deliberate timeline, demanding respect for time and material alike. You continue your task, allowing the familiarity of the rhythm to become profoundly soothing. The minor aches in your back or shoulders feel less like discomfort and more like proof that you have existed fully within the day's necessary activities. You are part of a continuous thread of human endeavor, linking yesterday's labor to tomorrow's readiness. The deep satisfaction comes not from completion, for there is always more material requiring attention, but from the steady continuation itself. It is in the consistent motion, the mindful engagement with what your hands can coax into shape or order, that you find a profound and reliable kind of peace. You are simply existing, moving through the necessary tasks of life, one gentle turn, one measured stitch, one gathered twig at a time. The persistent energy of the morning has settled into a gentle, steady hum. You find yourself positioned slightly apart from the main flow of activity, perhaps near a doorway or leaning against a stone wall that has absorbed the day's warmth. The air feels different now, distinct from the sharp chill of dawn and the purposeful bustle of early labor. It is a midday pause, a time when movement seems to slow just enough for observation to become possible. You lift your gaze slowly, taking in the way the high noon sun manages to scatter its light across the worn cobblestones, illuminating dust motes dancing lazily in the air above the passing heads. There is no grand unfolding here, only the steady, patient rhythm of a life lived in close proximity to others. The alleyways around you are narrow and winding, smelling faintly of animal manure mixed with baking bread and sweet wood smoke. You trace the path of one of these smells with an almost physical attention, noticing how they blend together into the unique olfactory tapestry of this medieval town. Each scent tells a story of necessity. The distant tang of river water, the sharp, acrid smell of leather being tanned in some nearby workshop, and the comforting sweetness from the oven of the corner bakery. You notice your own breath moving steadily in your chest, accompanying the gentle rhythm of the crowd passing you by. Movement becomes a source of quiet education here. You watch a cart trundling slowly past, laden with woven baskets or perhaps bales of grain. The wheels creak in a predictable measure, a rhythmic, woody protest against the stone beneath them. Each creaking rotation forces your attention to rest on small details. The calloused hands gripping the cart pole, the slight unevenness of the load, the way the wood itself seems polished by decades of use. It is an exercise in deceleration, forcing you to perceive the passing world as a series of steady, manageable segments rather than a continuous blur. You turn your focus to the people who populate these passages. They move with the efficiency born of routine. A merchant, perhaps, carrying a bundle wrapped in rough canvas, steps around you. You observe the way his shoulders carry the weight, not dramatically, but as an accepted part of his daily frame. His clothes are simple wool and linen, colors muted by dust and time, earthy browns, faded ochres, the pale gray of undyed flax. There is nothing sudden or arresting about their appearance, only the steady accumulation of practical utility. You notice how these garments seem to breathe with them, shifting slightly over the musculature beneath, testifying to long hours of necessary work. The small transactions unfold before your eyes like slow-motion plays. Near a wooden stall built into the wall, you watch a woman bartering for dried herbs or perhaps some dyed yarn. You focus on the subtle gestures, the way her fingers point to the quality of the leaves, the slight tilt of her head when assessing the value, the quiet exchange of coins, copper pieces that feel cool and rough against the palm of your observing hand. These exchanges are fundamental. They represent the necessary flow of goods and labor that keeps this dense community breathing through the day. It is an intricate system built on mutual reliance and unspoken understanding. You begin to notice the persistent physical presence of the architecture itself. The walls feel thick, suggesting a defensive slowness, a resistance to sudden change or storm. Mortar mixes with age. Stones are sometimes unevenly fitted, bearing witness to repairs made by hands long since turned to dust. You place your hand briefly against this cool stone, feeling the rough texture under your fingers. It is solid, dependable, and utterly unremarkable, and in that very lack of drama lies a profound stability you can almost feel settling into your bones. The sunlight shifts slightly as midday progresses, changing the quality of the light pouring down onto the ground. The stark white of the sun becomes slightly softened at the edges, losing some of its aggressive brilliance. Shadows deepen and sharpen beneath eaves and market stalls, creating a temporary geometry that contrasts with the soft movement of life passing through it. This plays on your sense of time. You are suspended in this stretch between morning labor and the gathering dusk. You walk slowly now, your steps requiring no urgency. You pass by children playing games near a corner well. Their play is not boisterous or loud. It involves simple chasing circles or tossing small stones that make soft, dampened plunks against the pavement. The sounds are integral to the soundscape. The gentle clack of wooden shoes, the occasional low laugh that seems quickly absorbed by the surrounding structures. These moments remind you how fundamentally patterned existence is, a pattern built from repetition and necessity. Your awareness drifts back to the idea of rest, the concept that has been quietly structuring your day since waking. The thought arrives unbidden, gentle as smoke rising upward. It is a contrast, the ceaseless, vital flow of life in the streets against the profound stillness you carry within you. You reflect on how much effort goes into merely existing within this historical time. To sustain oneself required constant alertness, participation in the predictable cycle of labor and rest, market and meal. The ability to pause, to simply be an observer without the need to contribute or transact, feels like a deeply restorative privilege. As you move past clusters of stored goods, barrels marked with cryptic ownership crests, stacks of dried timber waiting for use, you contemplate the value of permanence. Everything here is designed to endure. The heavy timbers supporting the rooftops, the resilient stones holding the foundations, the wool that changes from soft fleece to durable garment. These things speak of people who understood slow processes, those who worked not for fleeting profit, but for the durability of their community's continuous survival. The sensory immersion continues as you notice specific details about waste and resourcefulness. A discarded wooden pallet lies in a corner, its slats worn smooth by countless feet. Someone has utilized it to prop up a cartwheel. Another person is braiding the remaining scraps into something functional. Waste here does not exist. Everything simply changes function or falls back into the soil. This level of holistic resource management demands an intensely observant lifestyle, a life where you learn to see value in what others discard, much like how your deep appreciation for physical comfort might make you acutely aware of a luxurious bed of clean straw at night. You find yourself pausing again, sitting down lightly on a low step. You are enveloped by the ambient noise. The murmur of voices discussing trade or gossip, the intermittent shouts of a street vendor calling his wares, and the consistent creak of cart axles. It is a complex, layered sound bath that somehow manages not to be overwhelming, but merely textured. You watch a woman sitting near the mouth of an alleyway, perhaps waiting for someone, or simply resting from her own chores. She carries herself with the settled dignity of someone who has seen countless days unfold exactly like this one before her. Her hands rest in her lap, folded loosely. The stillness around her is not vacancy. It is a deep reservoir of accumulated experience. You let your focus soften further, allowing your attention to move away from people and objects, towards the encompassing atmosphere itself. You become attuned to the ambient temperature shift, the subtle cooling that begins to signal the approach of the later hours, even though the sun has not yet dipped below the ridge line. This gradual change in climate is another rhythm you are learning, the slow deceleration signaled by air cooling, just enough to make a slight shiver run through exposed skin. This meditative observation solidifies a core understanding about life's rhythms. The highest form of comfort, perhaps even luxury, is not derived from foreign goods or extreme wealth, but from reliable stability and the peaceful assurance that basic necessities, food, shelter, fuel, and rest, are managed within a predictable framework. To have such dependable, simple comforts awaiting you at the end of a day's journey was a rare and highly valued state of being in these times, making even something as rustic as a fresh layer of clean, fragrant straw feel exceptionally precious indeed. The light outside has begun to deepen, shifting from the bright clarity of midday into the softer, bruised tones of late afternoon. You move with a noticeable slowness now, a deceleration that feels less like tiredness and more like the natural winding down of the day's necessary energy. The rhythms of the market square and the community